Welcome back to Shire Travels. This is part 2 of our road trip from Perth up to Broome. In this one, we leave the Shark Bay area, head up to Cape Range National Park near Exmouth, back down to Coral Bay, all the way inland to Karijini, and then up to Broome. Once we'd finished up at Monkey Mire, it was time to head north. So we pulled in at Carnarvon just to stock up on food because they had major supermarkets there compared to Coral Bay or Exmouth. One place we didn't get out to, but it's definitely on our list for next time, is the Kennedy Ranges. So these are a few hours east of Carnarvon, and there's a few nice gorges there, quite a few walks you can do, and some interesting drives up onto kind of the cliffs around there as well. So that one's definitely on the list for next time. If you have a four-wheel drive, I think there's a few four-wheel drive tracks out there you can do as well. After we had stocked up in Carnarvon, we hightailed it up to Cape Range National Park. We stopped in at Exmouth just to top up at water, which at the time was free at the visitors centre. Not sure if it's the same case now. We chose to stay at Tulkey Beach in Cape Range National Park. As I said before, when we did this trip, there was hardly any information on YouTube or social media about doing the West Coast. Had we have had the knowledge that we had now, we would have stayed at somewhere better, so maybe Osprey Bay or Mesa or Kurrajong, ones which have really good snorkeling right off the beach at the campsite. The reason we went with Tulkey Beach is because on Google Maps it was the closest one to Turquoise Bay, and we thought that Turquoise Bay was pretty much the only thing to do in Cape Range. We didn't really have any idea of anything else that we could do there because there wasn't that much information, so that's why we stayed there. On our first full day at Cape Range, we went down to Turquoise Bay. So we parked up there and spent the whole day there. We did the drift loop snorkel that you can do. So you hop in at one end of the beach and the current takes you down over the coral, and then you hop out just before all the water kind of rushes out into the open ocean. The snorkeling there was fantastic. We saw heaps of different coral, big bommies, different brightly coloured coral, lots of different fish there as well. It was really good just to be able to literally walk a couple meters off the beach, float your way down, see it all. We knew this trip would be quite rushed. The distance from Perth to Broome is huge, and to do it in 3 weeks, you're kind of on the go every single day or every other day. So for us, we really wanted to have a couple of days where we pretty much did nothing. So that was what we did at Turquoise Bay. We just hung out in the water, snorkeled, soaked up the sun, and relaxed pretty much. So on the next day, we decided to do a boat trip on Yardi Creek. Yardi Creek is located at the bottom of Cape Range National Park. So the boat cruise itself, I don't think you could book ahead. I think we just turned up on the day and we paid cash. I think it might have only been about $20 per person. Went for about an hour. They take you to one end of the kind of Gorge Creek area and back. It was really, really interesting. The gorge itself was stunning, all the red rocks, but there was also plenty of wildlife there as well. We saw egrets. We also saw sea eagles. There's a couple of seagulls that have a big nest in there. We got to see one fly back with a fish, which was pretty cool. And then we also got to see all the wallabies that live there. And I had no idea that there are wallabies that live on the cliff sides, which is pretty amazing because they're vertical basically. And these wallabies are just hopping around everywhere. How they don't fall in all the time, I don't know. But it was really, really interesting to see. And if you have enough time in Cape Range, I would definitely recommend hopping on that tour. We did that Yardi Creek tour in the morning, and then in the afternoon we just went back to Turquoise Bay and enjoyed a bit more time relaxing, soaking up the sun and getting ready to leave the next day to head to Coral Bay. So as we drove down to Coral Bay, we also pulled into Charles Knife Canyon. Now there are a lot of different canyons and gorges around there that you can drive into. There's some really good ones if you have a four-wheel drive. You can drive along the dry riverbed and get right into kind of the middle of the canyon. We just went up to Charles Knife Canyon because it was two-wheel drive accessible. We're in the motorhome, and it had a really nice view out over the canyon and also out to the reef as well. Beautiful spot. I see a lot of people go there at sunrise and sunset. Definitely recommend doing that. Now, if you are in a four-wheel drive and you're set up to be quite self-sufficient, i.e. you have kind of a rooftop tent set up or a caravan, there are plenty of stations around the Ningaloo area that you can camp on, run by Parks and Wildlife. I'm sure everyone out there who's looking at doing the West Coast knows the name of them. There's Warra Station, there's Ningaloo Station. They've got the really nice places like South Lefroy, North Lefroy, Windabandy, 14 Mile, all those sorts of places. They are four-wheel drive accessible, so it wasn't an option for us to go out there in our motorhome. They are all on the bucket list for next time, and if you have a four-wheel drive and you're set up to be quite self-sufficient, that is definitely a good place to stay. So we made our way down to Coral Bay. We stayed at the People's Park in Coral Bay. Why we chose that? It was the closest to Bills Bay, and where we were being picked up for our whale shark swim was right next door. So it was the most convenient spot. I booked it well in advance, and I'd also booked us to be on like the first row kind of beachfront. So this was the view out of our back window in the van. We loved Coral Bay. A lot of people are like, oh, it's so busy and touristy. And I think, you must never have been to the East Coast, because it is not busy. It is 2 caravan parks, a couple of bars, a bakery, maybe like a pizza shop, and that is it. It is very quiet, really good vibe, lovely holiday area. We went out a couple of nights for dinner and there was live music. There's a little bit we could walk up to and watch the sunset. So it had a viewing platform and benches. A lot of people kind of went up there and took a drink. We did. Watched the sunset, really good atmosphere. We did a whale shark swim when we were at Coral Bay. That was pretty much the main reason why we went there. We went with Coral Bay Eco Tours. There are lots of other operators out there. The place where we had to go to get fitted for our wetsuits and get our snorkeling gear and get on the bus to actually go down to the marina was right opposite our caravan park, so it was really convenient. So we went there, got all suited up, kitted up, got ourselves ready for the day, hopped on the minibus and went down to the marina. We hopped onto our boat and started heading out for the day. So this was a full day trip, everything included: morning tea, lunch, afternoon tea, glass of champagne on the way home. We sailed out for quite a while to get into some deeper water, and the first thing they did was kind of like an introductory snorkel. I think it's more for the crew to kind of gauge who can swim, who can't swim, talking you through how to get on and off the boat and things like that. So we all went for a bit of a snorkel around some really nice coral, and we saw a manta ray, which was pretty cool. While we were doing the snorkel as well, it was also a chance for us to see the underwater photographer in action. Most whale shark tours offer this. They have a professional photographer on board with all the gear to take really nice pictures of you underwater, snorkeling. If you see a whale shark, swimming next to the whale shark, really cool. It's not included in the price, it's extra. So at the end of the day, you can get your pictures on a USB. We bought them, I think at the time ours was $70 to buy, and we were happy to buy them because the pictures were really, really good. Once we'd done our snorkel, it was time for some morning tea and to head out to deeper water. During this time, the boat is in contact with an aerial spotter trying to find the whale sharks for us, and the crew talk us through what the procedure is in terms of if we find a whale shark, we get split into 2 groups. One group will go in and swim and then swap with the other group just to try and make sure that everyone gets their turn to swim with the whale shark. They talk you through kind of whale shark etiquette, so not to touch them, not to try and get in their way if you can. If you are in their way and they're coming towards you, to starfish and try and make yourself kind of as small as possible so that they don't touch you. We get the call, they've spotted a whale shark. We beeline it to the whale shark, get there. There are already 2 other tour boats there. So it is a case of everyone trying to be as orderly as possible to make sure that everyone gets their turn. They're not just throwing in, 100 people and overwhelming the whale shark and people getting kicked in the face by other people as they swim. So this whale shark might have only been about 5 meters long. So as far as whale sharks go, it's pretty small. We hopped in and got one swim with this whale shark, but after a while I think it had enough. Too many people, too many boats. It dived down into the deep blue abyss, which usually means they're going to leave. The other tour groups did decide to stay in case the whale shark came back, however our tour decided to leave. With this first whale shark as well, for a lot of people, I guess the mentality is that this might be it. This might be the only whale shark we see all day. I want to get my picture. I want to get my GoPro footage. So it was a bit of a scrap, and everyone is kind of just, it doesn't matter if, you're cutting someone off or going in front of someone, people would just kind of making a beeline for the whale shark. And sometimes it was a bit kind of full on. You'd have people's flippers like whacking you in the face and knocking you. One thing we found was no matter how fast we swam, the whale shark was faster. We found they tend to swim around in circles or loops looking for food, so don't be afraid to slow down and hang back. There's a good chance they'll swim close to you. So we left, we got the radio call that there was another whale shark that had been spotted, so they put us all on the back of the boat, geared up, ready to go, and we were going so fast, and all I could think was, oh gosh, if we hit like a wave wrong or something and we bounce, we are all going to go flying behind the boat and just land in all this like surf basically. Luckily we didn't, and as soon as we got to the whale shark, it was like, right in the water, go. So this is some footage of actually when we found the second whale shark. So this is jumping off the boat and you can kind of see it's a bit chaotic. So everyone's swimming there. Whale sharks, they don't look like they're moving fast, but they move really fast. So you kind of have to swim your heart out to try and keep up with them. This second whale shark probably would have been about 8 meters long. So really big, beautiful to see. Compared to the first whale shark we saw, this one just did not care that we were there. As I said before, the procedure with the tour group was that we were in 2 groups and one went in first and then we swapped and the other one went in just to make sure everyone had their fair chance to swim with the whale shark. The second whale shark hung around for so long that after swapping for a few times, people were like, you know what, I've seen enough, I'm getting pretty tired. And that was me. After I'd been swam with it maybe 3 or 4 times, I was like, yeah, I'm pretty tired. I'm more than happy to just sit up on the boat, have a drink, have some food, and just watch it going around because it was so close to the surface. You could see it swimming around just as you were sat on the boat, which was really, really interesting to see. When Tom was up on the boat as well, looking at the whale shark below, there was also this guy in the background on this fishing boat, and look at the size of the fish he caught. Pretty impressive. So then our tour was over. It was time to head back to Coral Bay. We all enjoyed a glass of bubbly and just chilled out on the boat and reminisced on what an amazing day it was. Going back into Coral Bay as well, you go over the really shallow turquoise water. You can see all the coral below. It's so cool. I definitely recommend, if you can, hopping on the front of the boat, hanging your legs over and just taking it all in. As we were sailing back, we saw a tiger shark as well. So our photographer actually jumped in the water next to it and took a few pictures of it. And then we got back to the marina, hopped on the minibus, and then back to our accommodation. We got some fantastic footage, pictures, videos, and just the experience of being there in the water with a fish that big is just incredible. And they're so gentle and so powerful at the same time. Like you can see in some of those footage when you see their tail move. The jellyfish that were next to them, probably about the size of a basketball, and you could just see them getting just washed around in the wake of the whale shark's tail. If you're going to be in the Ningaloo area at the right time of year, I would 100% recommend doing a whale shark swim. Yes, they are expensive, so I think ours was about $450 per person. Bear in mind though, it is a full day tour, so I think our tour must have gone for about 8 hours and included your wetsuits, your snorkeling equipment, morning tea, lunch, afternoon tea, a glass of bubbly on the way home, as well as the opportunity to purchase the photos for an additional cost afterwards. But it was so worth it. I would definitely recommend it. While we were at Coral Bay, we also went down to Skeleton Bay, I believe it's called. This is a black-tipped reef shark nursery, so there's lots of little baby sharks there. I don't think we saw any at the time we were there. We must have just been there at the wrong time of year. We did, however, see these weird caterpillars that were all walking in a line and actually getting like washed by the waves. I've seen other people post about them too, and they are just so strange. So after we went to not find the baby sharks, we hung around Bills Bay and just relaxed, soaked up the sun. And then that evening we actually did a sunset quad bike trip. So this quad bike trip left from Coral Bay and we drove up into the sand dunes, actually quite near Five Finger Reef, I think. And also another place called Turtle Bay, I think. So we drove all up and down the sand dunes, along the beach. It was really fun. We got to drive down some big sand dunes as well. They don't actually look that big in the pictures, but at the time it was pretty scary being at the top and looking down over the edge. That was really fun. We just booked it directly with the tour operator. I think from memory it might have been about $100 each. Went for a couple of hours, burnt around the sand dunes for a bit, and then drove back into town, which was pretty cool, driving through town on your quad bike. Really good tour and would definitely recommend it. With our time on the Ningaloo over, it was time to head inland to Karijini. Karijini is about 6.5 hours from Coral Bay, so we left as early as we possibly could in the morning and took our time, gave ourselves the entire day to get there pretty much. We stopped off in Tom Price, which is the mining town just before you get to Karijini. They have a Woolworths there, so we stocked up on food. We also topped up our water tanks. So we stayed at Dales Campground in the Karijini National Park. A couple of reasons we stayed there. It's walking distance to Fernpool and Fortescue Falls, and a couple of other walks that we could do there. So we didn't have to worry about driving the motorhome and packing it up. The other reason was that at the time, all the other gorges were only accessible by a track which was four-wheel drive only. From what I've heard, the track actually was really, really rough. It definitely wasn't oh, you'll be all right in a two-wheel drive. It was definitely four-wheel drive only. They have now bitumized that road, so getting out to the other gorges on kind of the other side of the park is much more accessible. So we were kind of limited in what we could see there because we were in the motorhome, which was a bit of a shame, but the areas we saw around Dales Campground we really, really liked. On the afternoon when we got there, we set up the motorhome and then we just went for a walk down to Fortescue Falls just to have a bit of a look around and stretch our legs after such a big day of driving. It is absolutely beautiful there. A lovely waterfall cascading down the rocks. The rocks themselves are also really interesting. You can see all sorts of different layers there, and you can see waves almost where the rocks have been kind of crushed together. The next day we decided to do the loop walk that they had, which starts at the top of the gorge, goes down to Fortescue Falls and Fern Pool, and then you walk along the gorge to Circular Pool and then back up. As far as I know, Circular Pool is actually closed, and I think it might be permanently closed. A few years after we went there was actually a landslide and it closed off access to the pool. The walk, however, we started kind of at the top around the rim, and then we walked down to Fern Pool to start with. Such a beautiful spot, very quiet and tranquil. A lovely little waterfall that comes off the rocks, and the water's nice and warm. So you swim across to it. You can actually sit kind of behind the waterfall in like a little cove. So we sat there for a while, enjoyed the warm water coming off the rocks. And then we made our way to Fortescue Falls. Again, a really nice waterfall. Being there quite early in the morning, yes, it was a little bit cooler, but the sun is actually on the waterfalls at that time. So it's quite pleasant to just sit there in the sun at the waterfall and take it all in. And then we started our walk through the gorge to get down to Circular Pool. And it is a really beautiful walk. Amazing orange cliff faces either side and water that flows through the middle of it. Lots of lovely greenery and trees. Just a really beautiful spot. It was a pretty easy walk. There are some bits where if you don't want to get your feet wet, you do need to kind of rock scramble or rock hop your way along. Then at the end we got to Circular Pool. You might have guessed it, a circular pool of water. You could swim there. We didn't, a bit too cold for us. The sun wasn't on it at that point. So we took it all in. There's also a little waterfall there where you can kind of get behind as well. And then we began the walk back up to the top. As we're walking up, we also found this little guy. He was not very pleased at being woken up by us and made his way under a rock so we could get by. Dales Campground itself was nice enough. It was very, very basic. They had a drop toilet and marked out bays where you could park, and that was pretty much it. So there's no water, there's no power hookup. I think from memory it wasn't that expensive. Being a parks campground, it might have been about $20 a night. They have campground hosts there as well, so as you check in they give you leaflets on all the different walks that you can do in the area, which is very handy. That was our short time in Karijini, and it was time to head onwards to Broome. So we did quite a big drive up to Port Hedland, and then we made our way to 80 Mile Beach, and that's where we were going to stop for the night. 80 Mile Beach was nice enough. We didn't have a full drive, so we couldn't drive onto the beach. We just kind of hung around. I think we just played some frisbee on the beach and left the next day. Rather than park up the motorhome in a caravan park in Broome, we actually dropped it off kind of as soon as we got there. And then we went and stayed in an Airbnb. And while we were there, the host helped us out with organising a hire car. We just thought it would be much easier to get around Broome. We're only going to be there for a couple of days, but it'd be a lot easier just to get around in a hire car rather than it would be getting around in a motorhome. One of the things we did in Broome, which was on our bucket list, was a camel ride on Cable Beach at sunset. Although I think we did the tour just before sunset because it was like $50 cheaper. So we hopped on our camels, we rode them up and down the beach, got a whole heap of pictures. Really beautiful spot. It's one of those things you have to do. If you're going to Broome, you should hop on a camel. So ticked off the bucket list. Cable Beach is a beautiful spot. After we did our camel ride, we hung around and watched the sunset for a bit. The next day we went for a bit of an explore around Broome itself. So we went out to Streeter's Jetty. We went and saw the Sun Cinema, which I think might be one of the oldest cinemas in Australia, and just kind of explored the streets, learned a bit more about the pearling history there, and also the history of all the different cultures that have come across to Broome as well, mainly for the pearling, and the influence that that's had on the area, which was really interesting. We went to a spot near Town Beach to have a bit of lunch and overlook the water. We also got to see our first boab tree there, which was very exciting. Another thing we did was head to Ganthium Point to try and find the dinosaur footprints. Now we found these footprints, but I'm pretty sure they're fake, and they're kind of ones to get you in and be like, oh, there's some dinosaur footprints. I'll go and spend a bit of time finding some more. We couldn't find anything else that really looked like a footprint. To be honest, we didn't really know what we were looking for. Still a nice spot to go though, with the beautiful red cliffs and the blue ocean there. And then in the evening, we just went back to Cable Beach. We got some fish and chips and just sat on a grassy bit at the waterfront just to enjoy our last night there. And then the next day we were on an afternoon flight out of Broome. So in the morning, they actually had Cable Beach polo on. So this was polo games that they were playing on the beach. I love horses, so it was great to just kind of sit there, kill a bit of time before our flight on a beautiful beach and watch some polo. We really liked Broome. Again, one of those places which had a nice holiday vibe. We didn't get a chance to head out to places like Coconut Wells. We also didn't get the chance to explore anywhere up the Dampier Peninsula either. All on the bucket list for next time. But what we did see in Broome, we really liked and would definitely recommend it. You could spend a bit of time there. As I mentioned before, there's also lots of pearling done there, and we definitely want to hop on a pearling tour next time. So that was our West Coast adventure at an end, and it was amazing. I think we both agree that this is the best trip that we have ever done so far. There are so many places that we loved and want to go back to, places that we want to explore further and spend more time at. One thing we loved about the trip was just the variety of landscapes in it, because WA is such a big state. You have completely different landscapes and environments in the south compared to the north and inland. It's also very accessible in terms of seeing amazing gorges, seeing the reef as well, and we just loved it. When we go back, hopefully as part of our big lap, we plan to spend probably 4 or 5 months there and really do the area justice, get out to all those places that we couldn't get to because we were in a 2-wheel drive at the time. All up from Perth to Broome, it would have been about just under 3,000 kilometers that we did. And over 3 weeks, it was a very busy trip. It was kind of stop and go the whole time. We felt it was definitely worth it though. It was a good way to get a bit of a taster at each of the spots, and like I said, work out where we definitely want to go back next time, where we want to spend a lot more time as well. That brings us to the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below.